Today I am reading from the 10th book in the Left Behind series, and the name of this book is The Remnant on the Brink of Armageddon. And we are reading chapter 9 today. Chloe didn't know the specifics of the directed energy weapon lying across the back seat, but she'd heard the effect it had on a target, and she was curious. She carefully lifted it into her lap, making Hannah alternate from watching the road to watching the DEW. Don't point that thing at me, Chloe. It's not even on. That's like saying a gun isn't loaded. People get killed all the time with guns they swear aren't loaded. Looks pretty simple. You know the deal with these, right? Yes, Hannah said. Now, Chloe, please. Looks like you just turn it on, let it heat up or whatever it does, and fire away. It's non lethal. Yeah, I know, but 130 degrees on soft tissues, going to make you wish you were dead. But I can get those guys to quit following us. Don't even think about it. You miss, they start shooting, and we're not going to help anybody. We're not helping anybody anyway, Chloe said. We're sitting here with Uzis, sidearms, a shotgun, and a DEW, and we've left Mac up there by himself with all those GC. And how long are these guys going to let us lead them all over town before they realize we're playing them? We've got to shake them before we head for the airport, Hannah. They'll never let us in there. Shake them? Chloe, they're may be decimated, but they've got other personnel, more cars, radios. We're not going to shake them. I'm calling Chang. What for? I want to know how many people know where we are. Why? Hang on. Running was much easier without the cumbersome 50, but Mech had not run this far since when? Since never. No high school cross country race was this far. This was longer than a marathon. With the slow but sure staccato of his steps, he repeated in his mind, God, I'm yours, God, I'm yours, God, I'm yours. If he was going to reach the Jeep, it would be only because God wanted him to. This was way past Mac's human capabilities. Chang frantically read every tidbit of the communication between Akbar and Stepanich, hoping for something, anything to help Mac. His secure phone chirped, and the readout told him it was Chloe. You okay? He said. For now, she said. Is there a way to know how many people are following us? I can try to find out. What you're thinking. If it's a bunch, we're dead. We'll run them around town, and we could try to outrun them or shoot it out with them, but you know the odds there. If it's just one car waiting to tell everybody else where the underground headquarters is, I have an idea. Hit me with the idea before I start trying to access the Potomac's mainframe again. Why? If you don't like my idea, you don't look. Is that it? Chloe, don't do this. Mac is in more imminent danger, and we have no idea where Sebastian is yet. So I have to prioritize. Sorry, I'll make it quick. If they're looking to us to lead them to the underground, we'll lead them to one. Only it won't be the real one. It'll be some other unfortunate citizens who will get raided soon. I like it. That's a relief. No, I really do. And I think you two are small potatoes to them. Not that you're in the clear. Getting out of that airport tonight is going to be next to impossible. But they probably assume you have nowhere to go anyway, and they can round you up when you try to leave. They want the locals. And we're going to lead them to them, only not really. Back to you as soon as I can. Stop the racket or I'll kill you, Elena yelled. George heard no one else. He kept pounding. How was she going to reach the lock, unlock it, and open the doors? She swore, and he heard movement. She was dragging something near the elevator. He heard the key in the lock, then heard it turn over. It sounded like she had stepped down from the chair or whatever she had used to elevate herself. Now she was trying to open the doors. Not even Plato had been able to do it alone. George just sat there pounding. I'm trying to get to you, she said, but when I do, you're going to be sorry. Thump, thump, thump. I'll shoot through the door. Thump, thump, thump. You'd better cut that out, and I'm not kidding. He could tell she was struggling with the doors. There was no way she could open them. If only he could get her to forget they were unlocked. He quit banging. That's better. He heard her step up again. The key was going into the lock. Thump, thump, thump. No, I'm onto you. I'm locking it, and you can just thump all night. She locked it. George stood and found the other boot. He put one on each hand. Now he leaned forward with his hands above his head, the boots pressing against the doors. He dragged them as he slowly slid to the floor and let them drop. George made sure his knee hit first, hard, then his hip, then his side, then the boots, then his hands. He lay still. You finished playing around in there? Huh? Are you? You gonna get yourself shot? You okay in there? Hey. She swore again, and he heard her on the phone. Was banging around in there. I threatened to shoot him, and he quit. But now I think he's passed out because it sounded like he collapsed. There's no air in there, no ventilation. Where? I'll look. She slapped the doors twice. Hold on in there. I'll get you some air. Chang found the tape of radio transmissions among local GC peacekeepers in Potomac, but the quality was so poor the conversion facility couldn't turn it into readable words. He downloaded it into his own computer and tried listening through earphones. Chloe, he reported, I'm guessing, so what you do with this is totally up to you. I believe there is only one car following you, and it's not official GC. They've farmed out your surveillance to two. They're armed, of course, but all they're supposed to do is report who you warn about a raid. But you're guessing. I have to be honest, Chloe. I'm pretty sure that's what I heard. How sure are you? 55%. She laughed. That's funny. No, it's just that I was hoping for at least 60. If I can get you to move to 60, I'll buy this car today. Pardon? Nothing. Could it be 60-40? Max. We're going to give it a go. Elena was still on the phone, but George had to press his ear flat against the elevator door to hear, and unless she was shouting, he could barely make it out. On the wall next to the elevator, it seemed she was saying, yeah, gray door, got it. There's dozens of them in here, man. Well, like furnace, air, water heater. Yeah, that sounds like downstairs stuff. How should I know? About 20 of them look like that stuff. Okay, 21 and further. Okay, maybe this is first floor. Alarm system, emergency light, outside lights, stairwell, lights, elevator, different one for vent, fan, or light. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, all on one. But I have to. He's going to suffocate in there. No, prop those open even an inch, and I'd have to watch him every second. What if I turned it on but kept the doors locked? Every floor? So I locked them on every floor? Then there's nowhere for him to go, right? I'll call you. George heard her leave the lobby and start up some stairs. He kept his ear against the door and could feel and hear her locking the outer elevator doors on the 3 floors above him. So she was going to flip on the circuit breaker for the elevator so the fan would run and he could get some ventilation. That wouldn't do. He had to somehow get her to open the doors. She would be listening for the fan and for evidence of his being conscious. George reached up and felt the fan and the lights, pushing firmly around the sides. The panels were screwed on tight, but housing was hooked to wiring above the car. So those had to be the weakest panels in the ceiling. He pulled the gloves on and pushed hard. The metal was too tough and sharp in some places, even with the gloves on. Elena had to be nearly all the way back down now. George quickly slipped on the socks and boots, bent low, and stood on his hands, quietly walking up the sides of the car until the soles pressed against the ceiling. He toed around until he was sure he was pushing against light and fan, then stiffened his legs and pushed up from the floor with all of his strength. The fluorescents popped and fell. The fan blades bent and twisted and began to give way. His biceps shook and his chest ached, but he continued to push as if his life depended on it. He felt the panels tear away and the housing break away from the wires. The ceiling had to be a mess. George tried to keep from gasping or making noise as he slowly brought his feet back down and lay panting on the floor, carefully brushing the debris into a corner. He heard Elena hurry past toward the circuit breaker box and flip the breaker all the way off and then back on. The lights of the floor buttons on the panel came on, and he heard a hum in the ceiling where the light and fan should have been. Trying to regulate his breathing, George turned himself around, laced up the boots, and cat-like moved into position. "Getting any air in there?" Elena called out. She slapped the door. "Hey, better?" George got on all fours and crept backward until his feet were flat against the back wall. He reared up onto his knees until his seat was planted on his calves. Then he leaned forward and placed his palms on the floor, turned his face to the right, and lay his left cheek and ear flat on the floor. He fought to breathe deeply and slowly, preparing himself to hold his breath and appear dead. 2 more smacks on the door. "Come on, that fan should be running, is it? Give me a knock if you're getting any air." George lay there, crouched back against the wall, looking for all the world as if he had collapsed onto his face. "All right, I'm unlocking these doors, but if you try anything, you're a dead man." Now she was up on the chair, metal into metal. The click. George was tempted to hit the open door button himself, but he knew she would be standing there with her weapon leveled at him. He blinked several times to moisten his eyes so he could lie there with them open, unblinking, hopefully able to see enough peripherally to know when to act. "I'm opening the door, so don't move. I'd rather the brass find you shot than dead by accident." He heard her push the button, felt the car vibrate with the mechanism, and the doors began to separate. He wanted to drink in the cool, fresh air, but he dared not. In the faint light of the exit signs and a light from down the hall, he saw her in his peripheral vision silhouetted before him, feet spread, both hands on the high-powered weapon. She swore. She took a step closer. She took her left hand off the gun and reached for his carotid artery. As soon as her fingers touched his skin, he knew she would know he was alive. That touch would be his cue to spring. "I'll do whatever you say, Chloe," Hannah said, "but I've got a priority level than our getting out of here alive. A priority higher than our getting out of here alive. Mac, of course. Me too, and George. I just can't imagine he's still alive, Chloe. What's in it for them to keep him around?" "Don't think that way. Come on, we're not school kids anymore. Not thinking about it isn't going to change whether it's true. I'm just hoping they think they can still get something out of him." "Well, I had limited contact with him, Chloe, but let me tell you something. He looked like the kind of a guy who's going to do what he was going to do, and nobody was going to make him do different. I bet he hasn't given them diddly." "Pull over there." "You're sure this will work?" "Sure, I have to be sure. Let's just not be too obvious." "That's why you're stopping here and not at the front door, Hannah?" "When I head for the store, you stand outside the car, like you're watching for nosy Nellies." "Nosy Nellies?" "You know, GC or morale monitors nosing around." "Nosy Nellies? I didn't know that was so obscure. I forgot you grew up on a reservation." "Well, I will be looking for GC or MMs. So what do I do if they show up?" "They won't. They just want to raid whoever we're warning. Or at least there's a 55% chance of that. 60. So a 40% chance they arrest us or worse. You're carrying an Uzi. I've seen what you can do with a shotgun, and I can only imagine what you might do with a DEW. I'm just telling you, Chloe, if anybody comes, I'm jumping back in the car, honking the horn, and coming to get you." "Well, I should hope so." At the first sensation of skin on skin, George Sebastian called on all his years of training, football and lifting. As he pushed off the floor with his palms and drove his heels into the back of the elevator, the massive quads and hamstrings in his thighs drove him up and into Elena, who had murdered her last believer. George's 240 pounds slammed into her so fast and hard that as he wrapped his arms around her waist, he felt the top of his head push her stomach against her spine. She projectile regurgitated over him into the elevator before her face banged off his back and her boots hit his knees. He sailed 4 feet high and 10 feet into the lobby with her body folded in two. When he landed, his chest pinned her legs, her torso whiplashed, and the back of her head was crushed flat on the marble floor. George pounced to his feet and ripped the weapon from her hand. He stuffed her phone and radio in his pocket, then grabbed her by the belt and slung her lifeless body into the elevator. He locked the doors and left the key on the chair she had used to reach the lock. George laid a small rug from near the entry door over the gore where she had died and used the gloves to wipe up the blood trail to the elevator. He was about to charge out the back door to see if he could find a car to hotwire when he heard keys in the entry door and looked up to see an old man smiling and waving at him. The man wore a mismatched custodial uniform and carried 2 mops. As he entered, he said something in Greek. English, George said, certain he was flushed and looked like an escaped hostage who had just killed his captor. I always wonder if elevators still do not work. Yes, work? No, not to work? Right. Okay, howdy, English, how are you? Fine, goodbye, sir. Bye-bye to you. Chloe set her Uzi, gripping it with her right hand, and reached with her left to open the door. As soon as Hannah stopped the car in the shadows of an alley 3 blocks from Chloe's target, she stepped out and moved quickly. Tempted to look back or to glance from right to left for GC peacekeepers, Chloe kept her eyes on the storefront, where earlier that day she had watched the bombing of Petra on television. The place was dark, but in the back were at least 2 apartments with lights burning. She banged loudly on the glass door with the heel of her hand. It would be customary for the locals to ignore such a knock, assuming a drunk was stumbling around at the hour of the night. So she persisted until she heard someone call out, "Closed!" She banged and banged some more. Finally, a light in a door, and a craggy man in a bathrobe and slippers ventured out. "What is it? Who are you?" "GC," she whispered. "Open up. Just a moment, please." He came, scowling, but would not open the door. "What do you want?" "I have an urgent message for you, sir, but I don't want to yell it aloud." He shook his head and unlatched the door, but would open it only a couple of inches. "What's so urgent?" "I wanted to tip you off, sir, about a sweep through this neighborhood tonight, probably later." "A what?" "A sweep, a raid." "Looking for what?" he said, pointing to his forehead and his 216. "For that," she said. "You are a loyal citizen, so we wanted to warn you early so you would not be alarmed." "Well, you alarmed me. I apologize. Good night." He slammed and locked the door without a word, and Chloe hurried back to the car. "Well, that went well," she said. "Zap anybody?" Hannah pulled away. "What?" "With that ray gun." "Is this how you cover your fear? Banter?" "Must be. I'm numb all over." "I saw no one, Chloe. I don't know what that means. Either they're very, very good or we're paranoid. Probably both. We could hang around and see if the GC come looking for the underground." "I hope you're not serious." "Of course not. But you have to admit it would be fun, especially when they asked that old guy if he was tipped off about the raid." "Where to now, Batgirl?" "I feel like we're sitting ducks, Hannah. We can't call Mac unless we know he's somewhere he can talk. Chang will tell us what he can when he can. I say we look for somewhere we can wait without being seen and watch for Mac and George." "You're dreaming." Rayford had been assigned a tent at Petra and was about to settle down for the night. He couldn't imagine sleeping after all he had experienced. As he studied the stars, he heard his phone, rolled up into his side, and dug it out from his bag. He didn't recognize the calling number. Rayford affected a Middle Eastern accent he was sure was awful. "This is Atif Naguib," he said. "Ray?" "Who is calling, please?" "I memorized 2 numbers," the caller said, "yours and Chang's. But this is not a secure phone, and I didn't want to expose him." "Sebastian?" Rayford sat up. "They found you?" "Who's they?" "I just busted loose. Is there a safe house around here? Somewhere I can crash until I figure a way out." Rayford was suddenly on his feet. He gushed the information about the Tribulation Force contingent in Greece and how Sebastian could get to the local co-op. "I'll get to Chang and have him let the others know." And that's the end of chapter 9. And next I'll be reading chapter 10. Thank you for joining me and have a wonderful day.